timekeepers. Thank you for stopping by the My Read a Minute. To all that are new here, welcome. To all of my new subscribers, thank you for joining me on my journey. Let's get into the love and marriage Huntsville of it all. This is season 10, episode 11, and it is called Wanda-Ful Chaos. So it starts off with um Trish and Tisha. And Trisha invited Tisha over to just have a conversation, talk. I think they're cooking up something in the kitchen. It looks like chicken Caesar salad or whatever. Anyway, in the kitchen, Trish goes over her sessions that she's been having with Dr. Francis and saying that they've really helped her. And Tisha's like congratulating her, saying, yeah, this should help you with in all aspects of your relationships, not just with Ken, but with your kids and your friends. And she speaks very highly of her therapy session, and I guess she is looking forward to her future sessions. Then Tisha brings up, she says she's taking a mini trip to Bessemer. Her mom is debuting her food truck. And I think this is like the first day that she has, the truck in production or they go live or whatever. I guess it's a soft opening. I guess that's what Kimmy called it. And she's asking Trisha, does she want to go? Unfortunately, Trisha cannot go. They will be in Miami. I think it's her son's birthday. So she's going to have to take a rain check. So then Trisha's like, oh, wow, I hate that you're not going to be able to join us. And then she goes into talking about Nell. And so you see her and Trish talking about Nell, and then they flip back and forth between Nell and Chris talking about the series of events. And basically, they all have their different version about how things went. They all said Nell was yelling, but everybody was yelling. There was levels of frustration, I believe. And when you're frustrated and feel like you need to get your points across, your voice will elevate. Whether you're yelling at the person or not, that's just what happens. Anyway, they all have their own sequence of events the way they remember how it went. And not basically the bottom line is Nell felt like, and I'm going to go back a couple of episodes where Nell and Destiny were talking. And the bottom line is Nell didn't want to be called on the carpet to Destiny because she didn't want her to think that she knew anything about a kid on the way and her not tell her. I think that was like the bottom line. She didn't know about it in advance. And the controversy comes when they were out in California for the reunion. And evidently, Lance got a call saying someone was in labor and he left, and so did Chris and Nell. And they have like a flashback. They go back to this flashback that basically Nell saying that Lance got a call saying the baby was on the way. When I go back again to another conversation that Destiny had with Lance, his thing was he knew that the girl was pregnant, but wasn't sure that the baby was his. So I'm assuming they didn't do any DNA testing until the baby got here. So everybody went back for the baby, not knowing for sure if the baby was Lance's. Okay. Now, how long did you think that Nell might have known about it? I don't know if she knew anything about it because Lance wasn't sure. And I don't think he was going to tell anybody until he knew for sure. Because it wasn't anything to say. Now, did she know anybody was pregnant? I don't know. She could have. You know what I'm saying? But I think that's where the controversy comes into play. So, long story short, I guess Destiny talked to Tisha, and Tisha kind of elaborated. Yeah, well, the reason why Nell and them left is because she went because Lance was having the baby, or not Lance was going because the baby was on its way or whatever. And so when Destiny shared that with Nell, Nell got upset because it gave the impression that Nell knew about the baby and she didn't. I think that's the whole point, right? And so in response to Destiny bringing that bone to her, she said, "Tell Tisha to leave my name out of her mouth." And I think that's where this all stems from. But anywho, Tisha is not feeling Nell right now. She said she calls herself being a life coach. I don't even want to be associated with her or to hang out with the likes of her. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what Tisha was saying. Um, so in the simultaneous themes with Nell talking to Chris, she's basically saying the girls came and kind of like double teamed her or ganged up on her, saying that she was yelling, but they were yelling, and Kimmy kind of like threatened her, pushed her in the pool, and it went to a level where it didn't have to go. Now, my take on that scene where you see Kimmy is damn near begging Nell to come outside and have a conversation with them. Nell wasn't even really feeling the conversation from get go. But Kimmy says, "Well, come on out." She said, "I'll go with you." Well, okay. She said, "But I'm not for, no arguing or whatever." And I feel like it wouldn't have probably advanced to the level that it did had Kimmy stayed in where she was. Because Kimmy was the one that kind of raised her voice and then was threatening to throw people in the pool. And she had nothing to even do with the conversation. It didn't even involve her. Well, now you just said that you need to tell Tisha to keep my name out of her mouth and blase, blase, blase. Man, and she's like, "Nell, if you raise your voice at me one more time, I'm going to throw you in the pool." She did all of that. Where Tisha was keeping a level head, even though her thing was, "Well, Nell, well, tell me why you did leave." Nell basically said, "Well, it's none of your business." But Nell was already upset about the fact that how she had gone into Chris's face about asking about the NDA situation. And then the way it was brought back to her from Destiny, how Tisha was bringing up Nell, talking about that's why they left. So it was a couple of little things that kind of like piled on. And then this conversation didn't make it any better. So to me, it kind of looks like they're trying to ice Nell out. And the reason why I say that is because even before the altercation at the Fletchtivities, I think they called it that, Kimmy had called the girls together to go make soap, but she didn't invite Nell. Why? Because her excuse was, "Well, I knew Nell was getting ready for her event for the night." Well, then you let Nell tell you that she can't come. Or you let her work it out if she decides to go and get ready for the festivities. You know what I'm saying? So already Kimmy is feeling some way about now. She didn't invite her on purpose. And during their soap making event, when it was asked where was Nell, Destiny says, "Oh, I thought it was because Tisha was here." Again, putting another thing in the air that didn't have to be. Again, starting something. Again, that was starting something. And putting something in Tisha's head like Nell doesn't care for her. And the fact that her and Nell had had this sit down talk at the coffee shop, supposedly squashing things out. Remember, Tisha didn't even want to sit there until production told her to get her butt back in there and talk. Because she rode around the parking lot, came back, act like she thought about it, and when it said she had a lot of respect for Nell. No, you went back in there because the production told you to go back in there and talk to her. Because Nell never got up to leave. So there's some underlying things here. And I don't know, maybe it's because she's somewhat connected to Melody kind of a way. I don't know, because Melody don't deal with none of them, I don't think, to my knowledge. I don't know. But I feel like they're trying to ice Nell out. Anyway, so next segment. So Trisha, you see Trisha go to Dr. Francis is for her second session. She tells Dr. Francis that she thought that the last session she had with him was awesome. She said out of that, she did go visit her parents' grave sites and she cried. And that was a big move for her. And Dr. Francis commended her on that and said that was growth. And so he says, well, last time we talked about why you might have been angry or what your anger may have stemmed from. He said, but this time I want to get to know you. Tell me about you. And so he asked her, was she married? She said, in the process of a divorce. Now I'm thinking to myself, by this time she's already divorced, but clearly not. So she said, I'm in the process of a divorce and she has two kids and she does have a friend. And he was like, okay. So she says, tell me about the friend. And he tells her about, Ken and how her kids gravitated to him and how at first supposedly she didn't really want to let him in because she felt like the kids were gravitating to him wholeheartedly and not including her. Like before it was Ken, they always came to her, and now she's feel like she's being pushed to the side. And how she kind of feels a little jealous about how her kids gravitate to Ken, and especially her daughter, because with every event that and everything that or her daughter has, Ken is there, and you would think that he was her father. And Miss Dr. Francis is like, oh wow, that's great, But Trish has a problem with it, or had a problem with it, because I guess she felt like that was something else being pulled from her, and again, that sense of loss. And as she said, and how she would deal with it, she would make little jokes, little sarcastic jokes. But there's a lot of truth in a joke. But Dr. Francis said, but because it would come off as a joke, nothing was ever addressed. And she was like, yes. So he kind of breaks down, how it equates to her, feeling like she's lost a lot. She didn't want to lose her children. And she now knows that she's not being replaced, even though it felt like that. But she now knows that she needs to talk to Ken and let him understand how she needs to deal with her trauma that is from her past. And that was a good segment. It was a good session. She wrote all this stuff on the whiteboard, trying to give her a sense of stuff, and it looked like just a bunch of mess up on their whiteboard. But anyway, with that being said, um, Trish is really letting go of a lot of her anger, and this might make her into a better person on the show. Maybe she can actually look at people and talk to them now, because she's always like hiding, like she doesn't want to say anything, like she doesn't want to let anybody in. So she's like looks down. She doesn't even want to connect. She doesn't want to have that connectivity. That's why she won't even look in people's eyes. So the next scene is Destiny, Kimmy, and Tisha. They are on their way to Bessemer. I think Tisha must have rented a sprinter truck and they're, taking off for their road trip. And again, they start talking about Nell. Again, she's not invited to Bessemer because I think Destiny asked where was Nell, and she's like, I'm not talking to Nell. And they go into the sequence of what happened and who was telling Nell that she's hollering, and they do the little flashbacks. And again, Kimmy and Tisha have already made it known that they don't like Nell. They're not dealing with Nell like that. And I think Kimmy's actually stemmed a little further back from when they were on Melody's girls trip to where did they go? I can't remember anymore. But when they went to was it Puerto Rico? I don't know where they went. Brazil. Where did they go? Bermuda, Bahamas. I don't know. Wherever their road trip was. And remember when Nell got into it, they would call herself Tisha and Kimmy call herself getting on Melody about the rooms that they got. And Miss Nell came and was interjected herself in the conversation, was letting them know, like, y'all not gonna do this, blah, 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 blah. And Kimmy felt like, first of all, you're not gonna come and talk to me like that. So I don't think she's really been feeling Nell since then, to be honestly. But anyway. So they talk about Nell and how she was yelling and how this and that. And so Destiny was trying to be neutral in the situation, even though I don't, you know, I'm not feeling her either. But she was trying to be neutral in the conversation. And Tisha jumps up and she was like, she just hasn't gotten over the fact. I think she must have brought up the fact that Nell asked him about the interview that about what Martell did with the girl, and and with some jokes that were made about it, and that's when the NDA comment came about. And she said, Tisha basically said, I'm tired of people, making fun of Marcel and Maurice. And in 2026, that's not how I'm moving. She said, I'm tired of it. And she said, I'm not worried about no other chick. And she stands up and she's like, hey, look at me. I ain't worried about another chick ever. If you say so, Tisha, whatever, I'm glad you got the self esteem because she didn't have that self esteem 2029, 2028, 2018, or whenever when they first came on, because she was a little timid thing. Now she like boom, bam, bow. And I love it. I love that for her. Um, Again, to me, this is another way to ice Nell out. So then they went into talking about Destiny's dating scene and how she was dating Twan and Will. And she said they asked her about Twan, and she was like, well, I've asked. She said because of her role that's coming up, she needs to learn how to box. And she's asked Twan to show her some, boxing moves or whatever. She said, we haven't had our boxing date. Or then she switched it. We haven't had our boxing session yet. And then she said, well, how about Will? She said, Will's nice. She said, I enjoy his company. And she made it, she said, I know y'all joke and everything, whatever. She said, but I'm not screwing everybody that I'm dating. And she said, I let him know I'm not having sex with you. And so Tisha said, yeah, I know. That's why you got that other girl pregnant because you wasn't giving him none. That was dumb to say. That was dumb to say because that don't mean nothing. Men can have numerous of partners at the same time. So just because he ain't screwing one don't mean he said, oh, well, she not giving me none, I'm gonna get some over here. They will screw that one and that one because they trifling. And women can be the same way. So don't act like that's not a doable thing. Okay. They forgot about Martell. Okay. Where he got his side piece pregnant multiple times while Mel was over here having 4 children. Just saying. So they were pregnant at the same time, I think, at one point. Hello. So there's that. So then they go to Kim and Trish and they go out to eat. And, Trish comes clean to Ken because Ken tells her, you can, he said, you can open to me up to me about anything. Cause I think she was explaining to Ken about her sessions with Dr. Francis and how he's gotten he's gotten to show her and gotten her to open up about what she has been struggling with. And she basically told him that, she was afraid of losing her kids to him. He was like, me? How you gonna lose your kids to me? And then she basically let her know, like, because they always came to her. And now that they had him, she felt like she was just being pushed to the side. And so he was basically saying, well, I don't know. He said, we'll never let that happen. He was like, I don't know exactly. I'm paraphrasing. He basically said when they're doing something, they're going to try to come together and speak consciously about it. So nobody feels like, I guess the other one is being slighted or whatever. He said, he said, ultimately, I am happy. And she said, and me too. And he says, and I honestly see me being with you. And she said, and me too. And, and they go back and forth about that. But she comes clean with him about how she felt left out, especially when the kids started to gravitate towards him. I thought that was a dumb. I don't know. This scene was crazy. But anyway, next week shows a couple of things. It looks like they're going to have a dinner, another family dinner. I don't think Lexi is included. I don't see Lexi. I'm talking about with the Fletchers. But I don't see Lexi as a part of that. They may have tried to invite her, but she was probably like, no, thank you. Um, but anyway, they travel, they reach the the food truck. And it sounded like Nell said, "Oh, the hoes from Huntsville." But I think she said the whole gang is here from Huntsville. I think that's what she said. I had to listen to it a couple of times. I was like, she don't say nothing right, so you got to kind of listen really, really hard. But they all, show up and support her in her soft launch of her food truck. Miss Wanda comes and sits down with them, and Tisha goes right in and says, "I'm gonna need you to talk to Miss Nell." And she was like, "The old lady Nell?" Like, y'all right next to each other. Ain't no old lady Nell. Like, I think if Nell is close to 60, Wanda is 55. Come on. You know what I mean? I don't know how old Tisha is. Is Tisha 40 yet? I think she might be. But I know she had her at a young age, Miss Wanda. So I think she might have been 14, I think, when she had Tisha. So they're 14 years apart. So if Tisha is 40, Miss Nell, Miss Wanda is 54. So she's in her 50s. And Miss Nell is like pushing 60 if she's not already 60. So she's not that much older than Miss Wanda. Again, here we go. So she's talking to them and she's telling her what, Miss Nell said. And she said, "I think I need," she said, "not you know what the Bible says about having respect for your elders." And she said that whole Bible verse wrong. And she said, "You know what I tell you about elders." She said, "Well, we're not talking about your definition, mama. We're talking about what it says in the Bible." And she said something about you respect your elders, your days could be cut short or something like that. I don't know if that's how that scripture goes, but I kind of knew where she was trying to go with it. And so she was like, yeah, well, then she, of course, Miss Wanda goes to a confessional talking about if Miss Nell got to say something to my daughter, I'm gonna have to say something about, say something to her because she all in my daughter's business, la 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 la. So again, by her saying she thinks that her mom should speak to Nell, Destiny and Kimmy both saying they don't really think that's a good idea. They don't think that that is a good idea at all. Both of them, I can't even imagine how that would even go, honestly. Yeah, no, I don't even know how that would go. I don't think that would be a good thing either, honestly, because Nell automatically raises her voice when she gets a little bit excited. Can you imagine now? She saw how they were sitting around talking to her nicely. You saw how that ended up, right? That's not a good look. And Miss Wanda need not come and talk to anything. And Tisha's wrong. But Tisha does that with everybody. She does it with everybody. So instead of putting it on her, she let her mommy do her dirty work. So then Miss Wanda says, "Okay, so what happened?" So Miss Wanda's breaking it down. So she said, "Okay, so Destiny was the bone carrier." And she breaks it down of the sequence of events about how Destiny was speaking to Nell and how she didn't realize that her and Tisha had already had the conversation and didn't know that Miss Nell wasn't over it. And so she went back and said something to Tisha about how she said, "Leave her." And then that's when Tisha said, "Yeah," she said, "Leave my effing name out your mouth." And Kimmy was like, "I think you could have left that part out." She said, "Well, ain't that what she said?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "I'm talking about in front of Wanda." And she says, "I see what Tisha is doing." Yeah, okay. She did it to you too, Kimmy. Did you forget? Anyway, these ladies, I swear. So when she looks at Destiny, she said, "Oh, so you were the bone carrier." And Destiny's like, "No, no, 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 no. That wasn't how it went down. Blah, 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 blah." And it's just a lot. So then Miss Wanda basically says, "Well, what did you feel about it?" Because I think Tisha said something about how she didn't answer her about the whole interview situation. And she said she had went to her Instagram and responded that way. And she told her if she wanted to know how she felt about it, to look at her live. And so when they responded, so she looks at Kimmy and she said, "Well, how you feel about the whole thing?" And so Kimmy was playing dumb, like, "Well, how I feel about what?" And she said, "How you feel about, the interview and it went down. She said, "You believe it?" She was like, "No, I don't believe it." She said, "You don't believe it?" She said it, one in the butt, one in the mouth. She said, "Did you believe that?" She said, "I believe, sections." Her thing was just, "I believe it." She not even thinking about Tisha. Cause Tisha and them know. She said, "Well, it did happen." She admitted it. She said it did happen. But Kimmy is still saving face talking about she believes her man. We all know that this shit happened. I don't know that it happened, but I feel like it did. Miss Wanda said it. She said, "Well, it did happen." Tisha didn't say it didn't happen. She just said, "We don't care." But Kimmy's like, "No, I don't believe her." She said, "I don't believe." She said, "I believe men cheat." She said, "But that hoe talking about the girl in the video," she said, "I don't believe it happened to her." And I don't know why she's saying that because that girl was an attractive girl. Now, what she look like today ain't what she looked like back in the day. Somebody came to the internet with a picture of her back in the day, and she was gorgeous. This is her today. Back when they were messing with her, she was drop dead gorgeous. She looked better than Kimmy. Just saying. So that was it. What y'all think? I don't know about this place. I don't know about Love and Murder Huntsville anymore, y'all. I'm getting a little bored with it, to be honest. But I'll still review it just because I've been reviewing it. I'm gonna review the episodes that I like because I'm gonna start to cut down on them. I think I'm just gonna review the ones that I feel like might be exciting. If it's a filler episode, you might not see me on here. So just so. Anyway, y'all, please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about the episode. Leave your comments down below. Everyone be blessed. Peace.